What's good with my first time livers? It's your boy Stone Wilby. It's my first time living, and I know it's your first time living too. Your pain is not for no reason. God is using your pain for something better. God is using your pain for a blessing. God is using your pain to make you better, to make you stronger, and ultimately put you in position for the blessing that He has in store for you. The reason I say this is because I just finished Genesis, and as I'm reading Genesis, I encountered this story that sat with me. Joseph is one of many siblings. Joseph is also Jacob's favorite son. And Joseph has dreams that his brothers bow down to him. His brothers become very jealous of him, already considering that he's the favorite. And now he's having dreams that they bow down to him. Like, who are you, Joseph, right? It's like, who are you to have these dreams, Joseph? So what you're saying is that we're going to bow down to you? You think you're better than us? This makes them angry. And so what they do is, one day, all of Jacob's sons are pasturing his flocks. And so Jacob sends Joseph along with them to see how they're getting along with the flocks. And as his brothers see Joseph coming along, they devise a plan to kill him and say that he was killed or he was mauled by an animal. But instead, they ultimately decide, this is our blood, this is our brother. How about we sell him to the Egyptian traders that we see in the distance? And so that's what they do. They end up selling him into slavery. You're looking at this, and obviously this is not the ideal situation to be in. Nobody wants to be a slave, especially being sold off by his own brothers. But ultimately, that's what happens. He becomes a slave, and he's taken to Egypt with these Egyptian traders. But while in Egypt, he interprets Pharaoh's dreams, and as a result, he gets a place of high power. He becomes second in command in Pharaoh's kingdom. The reason that I bring this story up is because with Joseph being second in command, he was put in charge of feeding and distributing food when the famine came along. And when the famine came along, guess who else came to Egypt to be fed? All of Joseph's brothers, the same ones who sold them off into slavery. And this all took place in a span of years, because when his brothers arrived to Egypt, they have no idea that it's their brother Joseph. So Joseph finally reveals himself. After their father Jacob dies, they realize, maybe we're going to feel his wrath now that our father's gone. Maybe the only reason that he didn't exercise that wrath onto us is because father was still alive. But now that father's gone, he may just very well exercise that wrath onto us. But this is what sparked the video for me. This is what sparked this conversation for me. Because I pick up my Bible and open it up to, I believe it's Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. Just double check. I open up my study Bible, and Joseph's words in chapter 50, verse 20 is, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people." Those people including the same brothers who sold him off to slavery. I'm just saying all of this to say that obviously Joseph was put in a tough and painful predicament. Nobody wants to be sold off into slavery, especially to a foreign country and by their own brothers. However, God used that and blessed Joseph with a position of second in command in Pharaoh's kingdom in a foreign land, where then Joseph was able to bless his brothers, his father, and his brothers' children and wives. There are people who are going to hurt you, but it's not for no reason. Sometimes We have to wait to see the reason, or find the reason, ask God to reveal the reason. Why am I going through this? Why did this person hurt me? Why am I being hurt by said circumstance? It's not always going to be people, but sometimes you could be put in painful circumstances. But there's always a reason. God just doesn't let you suffer for no reason. Like, sometimes I think, I've inflicted pain, and people have inflicted pain on me, and it's resulted in me parting ways with people parting ways with me. And I just look at it and I wonder, where would I be right now if we hadn't parted ways, and if that situation hadn't happened? What is God using this situation for to shape me? How is he shaping me from this situation? Sometimes I be thinking, like, if it wasn't for certain circumstances, would I even be sitting in front of a camera right now? If it wasn't for certain circumstances, would I know God right now? And then I look back and I'm like, I probably wouldn't. There was a point in my life where, I was around certain people, and I'm not saying it's the people's fault, but I was around certain people, I was around a certain crowd, and it made me comfortable. I was comfortable in that crowd, and therefore, when you're comfortable, of course, you're less likely to change. So when I was forced into that discomfort, it made me change. It made me look for that salvation. It made me look for that help from God. And when I finally decided, I need help, I cannot do this alone, I got to know God. He was able to come into my life because I let him in. But sometimes I truly wonder, like, if it wasn't for situations, and if it wasn't for separations, would I know God? Or would I still be comfortable in those same situations? Would I have spiraled more and more and more downward? So y'all, I'm just saying this to say that, God is using your painful circumstances for something. And most of the time, you're not going to know what it is immediately. You're not going to know what it is right now. It might be a while before you know what it is, but it's not for no reason. There's a lot that you can learn from your painful circumstances. And it's these circumstances that give you the wisdom that you need to navigate life. It's the discomfort that you need in order to get out of your comfort zone, because when you're in your comfort zone, that's where you're going to stay. That's where you want to stay. Nobody's comfortable and says, some people might say, I need to get out of my comfort zone. But a lot of people, they want to stay in that comfort zone. They figure, this is working, so why not stay here? But God has bigger things for you. And it might be a while before that's revealed. And for me, I feel like it has been revealed. Even though, I'm not necessarily rich, or I'm not necessarily a leader or second in command in anything, I do feel that I am being called to something, and I know God more than I ever have. There was a point in my life where I called myself a Christian but didn't truly know God. I only called myself a Christian because I was raised to believe in Christ. If somebody's talking about God, Christ was the name, you feel me? But I didn't really know him. I just knew, my mom prays to Christ. Most of my family prays to Christ. That's God. I wasn't good on prayer. I wasn't in the Word. Got to a point where I resented Christianity. I wanted nothing to do with it. I wanted to pick up a Quran. I wanted to pick up crystals. I wanted to pick up everything but a Bible. I wanted to pick up everything but a cross. I wanted to learn about everything but who Christ was, because of the actions of other Christians. But point being that it was only through the pain that I felt, it was only through the separations that I went through, that I learned who Christ really was. And that allowed him to heal my heart. And once I saw the way that he healed my heart, I saw how true he was. I saw how he held to his promises, and I saw how reliable he was. And therefore, I've been growing in Christ ever since. But if it wasn't for those situations, if it wasn't for me being put in those situations, I wouldn't know. If it wasn't for me being put in those situations and really, forcing myself out of my comfort zone, if I really wanted to better my life, If it wasn't for me being forced out of my comfort zone, I wouldn't be in front of the camera, getting even more uncomfortable, chasing the discomfort. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know Christ. I wouldn't know discomfort. God is using our pain for something way better. But it takes the pain. It takes the pressure to make diamonds. So your pain is not for no reason. And so yeah, Joseph's story really sparked this in me, because I look at this and I relate it to my life. Like I said, I've hurt people, and I'm sure they've learned from what I've done to them. And people have hurt me, and it touched me personally, because I realized that if it wasn't for those people hurting me, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have the new gained wisdom that I have. Now I know that my pain was not for no reason. I'm not hurting for no reason. There's still pain that I go through, and I know that I'm not hurting for no reason, because then I'm going to come out of this and realize that all of that wisdom that I was praying for and asking for, this is where it's coming from. The pain that I'm going through, and my ability to submit to the Lord, ask the Lord for help, and for us together to get through it. That's where the wisdom comes from. You don't just pray for wisdom and then he just drops knowledge on your head. You don't just wake up one day with a third eye. Now you got to go through things. The people who are the most wise know a lot because they've been through a lot. Talk to your grandma. I talk to my grandma, and the reason that she has wisdom, or I talk to my mom, and the reason that she has wisdom, talking to my dad, the reason that he has wisdom is because they've lived more life than me. They've likely already been through all of the things that I've been through. They've been through the pain, and so they can help me with my own pain, because they've been through it. They've hurt too. They're still alive. They're still well, and even they're still learning, still gaining wisdom. But that wisdom comes from the trials and tribulations that you go through every day. God helped Joseph, and God's going to help us too. God's going to make us leaders. God's going to make us second in command. God might make us first in command. God's going to make us kings and queens. God's going to use our situations to make us leaders. God's going to use our situations to give us wisdom. God's going to give us situations to give us patience. God's going to put us in situations to build our faith. But our pain is not for no reason. Thank y'all for watching. My name is Stone Wilby. It's my first time living, and I know it's your first time living too. So be graceful, because God is. Peace.